All right. Thank you to the Kronos and Karasoft team for helping us put this together. And thank you for everybody who's joining us today on the webinar. Welcome to Reimagining the Employee Experience with Smartsheet. Today, we're going to have a lighthearted webinar where we're going to be talking about how we use Smartsheet to streamline your internal processes and provide a better user experience for your internal customers. We're going to go over a couple of real world use cases, and then we'll jump into the demo. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you're in this webinar, chances are you're probably a pretty heavy Smartsheet user, or you're considering using it for your internal operations. We love Smartsheet. It's a great platform. I think most people equate Smartsheet to a project management tool, but for those of us who have been using it for years, know that there's so much more that it can do. It's extremely flexible. It has a powerful workflow engine, and it has the ability to scale to the needs of a mom and pop shop all the way up to a Fortune 500 company. So it's a very powerful tool, and it really is the ideal tool for running your internal operations. So let's take a look at what a typical Smartsheet environment looks like. When we think of a typical Smartsheet environment, it probably evolved over time into something like this. You most likely started using Smartsheet for project management, and that may have gained some traction within your organization. So you might have multiple groups using it in multiple different capacities, specifically for project management. And as everybody was happy with that and things continued to grow, you maybe wanted to take it a step further. So you maybe made some internal intake sheets to capture some internal request processes. And then, as again, you were gaining momentum and people were starting to use it more, you maybe wanted to take it another step further by adding maybe a task tracking app or two or something like that. And then ultimately, you probably decided to automate a couple of your internal processes with Smartsheet, and that's great. This is typically where people get stuck. They've built out, these great tools within Smartsheet. They have all this data flowing through the system, but they don't really know how to connect it all together to make everything work together, and most importantly, provide a seamless user experience. Well, we've come up with a way to do that and to make it easy on everybody by using a plugin called Huddle. And Huddle does just that. It uses all of your Smartsheet tools and workflows and makes it very easy for you to connect them to make sure that they're all working together. It also provides users with a seamless, modern experience similar to that of something like a Salesforce or a ServiceNow, if you're familiar with those tools. So let's take a quick look at how Huddle actually does this. The first thing you'll notice is that the demo doesn't look like Smartsheet. And that's because Huddle utilizes web portals. So it takes your Smartsheet data and allows you to fully customize the user experience in these interactive web portals. And just to make it clear, because you might hear us actually use the term interchangeably, and that's actually incorrect. But these are web portals and not dashboards. As I mentioned, they're fully interactive, so meaning that they're not static. You can actually execute all of your tasks and activities right there within the portal itself. The other thing I'll just mention quickly is it's completely bidirectional. So any activity that happens in Smartsheet gets represented in the web portal and vice versa. so you don't have to migrate data or transfer data back and forth. It's all stays within Smartsheet. Another important element within Huddle is the configuration management suite. Within Huddle, we've developed a suite of tools to help you manage your Smartsheet environment. Tools like visual mapping, version control, and automated documentation. These are very powerful, very cool tools, but Frank is actually going to show them to you in the demo, so I won't really spend too much time talking about them right here. And the last thing I wanted to mention about Huddle is that it also includes a drag and drop builder for those web portals. So you don't need to be a developer to kind of build these things out. It's 100% zero code. So really anybody can build them. You don't have to bring in expensive consultants. The people who know the processes the best are the ones who can actually build them out. So this is one of my favorite features within Huddle, and we'll actually give you a quick tour of this during the demo as well. So I know today we're going to talk mostly about kind of an employee experience, kind of an employee hub, or maybe even think of like an intranet. But Huddle doesn't have to be used in one way. It can really be used in any way. So I wanted to share just a couple of use cases, real world use cases, of how other organizations are actually utilizing Huddle. The first example I wanted to share is from a very large nonprofit organization, one that everybody's heard of. And they had a challenge. They needed a tool to allow their folks to do some auditing in the field. So they needed to be able to do live auditing and generate reports from the field using tablets from hundreds of auditors across the United States. Now, they were initially using a point solution for something like this, and that became unsustainable. So they turned to Smartsheet and Huddle, and we were able to really build out a very complex system for them in really just a few weeks to get them up and running and get them ready for their very busy season, which was the summer. That was a huge success for them, and they started to explore other ways to utilize Huddle. And that was the exciting part about this. They actually started using it themselves and building out a bunch of portals themselves. And I believe the second thing they built was a way for people who are interested in applying to jobs at that specific group. They actually did all their job applications through Huddle. So that's another just very interesting use case on how to use something like this. And it's, again, very easy to use. Now, the second story I want to share with you guys, example I want to share with you guys, is, again, it's a global media company. This is another one that you've all heard of. But they were having challenges because they were using Smartsheet for project management for their marketing, but the challenge was that they were geographically dispersed. So they were really covered Canada, Latin America, Australia, and New Zealand, but they needed a way to collaborate a little bit cleaner, a little bit smoother, and they wanted to make sure that all their projects were able to communicate with each other. So they reached out to Huddle, and we were able to help them create a system that gave them all the connectivity they needed. And in some cases, it was with multiple languages and things like that. But it ended up working out very well. And again, this is another group who started with one use case, and they're starting to build out multiple use cases, multiple additional tools for their marketing team within that organization. The cool thing about this one is that Huddle caught on quite a bit because it was a pretty big win for them because they had been struggling for a while with this. And so much so that other groups, not the marketing team, started utilizing Huddle for their aspects. So like their global operations team started using it as well, which was really exciting for us. So again, you can start small, start with one use case, and then utilize Huddle to really kind of expand out your Smartsheet environment, expand out your utilization of Smartsheet, and make it a much more smoother, seamless user experience. All right, we are about to get into the fun stuff, I promise. But please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you have any questions or would like a personalized demo. I just want to go ahead and quickly address a couple of common questions we get when we do these things. Number one, all of our pricing is available on our website. However, I have recently had several folks reach out to me lately saying, hey, we're interested in something like this, but we're in end of year budget crunch or something like that. That's okay. We are offering a significant discount code for anybody who's who's watched this webinar. And again, if you're still under a tight budget crunch, just reach out to me. Let me know. I'm sure I can work something out with you, especially if you're a state agency or an educational institution. We'd be happy to work with you on figuring out a plan that's right for you. Additionally, we also get asked all the time, do we offer free trials? Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have that capability quite yet. However, if you are interested in doing a trial, we do offer month to month. We could come up with an extremely low monthly payment so that it is basically a free trial. So just if that's something you're interested in, let me know. Again, we will work it out with you and make sure that you're in there and getting a chance to work with it. All right, and now the moment you've all been waiting for, I will finally hand it off to Frank with Kronos. Frank, please take it away.
All right, thanks, Zaid. Now, I'm about to jump into a demo, but I'm going to put my hat on. So let's assume that I am Jim and I work in sales. Now, since I'm in sales, I'm most likely going to be working with a lot of our internal contracting team, as well as marketing and maybe accounting and finance. So let's see what a typical day could look like for Jim. So the first thing I do when I get to work is log into my Dunder Mifflin Employee Center. This Employee Center really acts like my main dashboard for work. Now, sometimes you'll hear people refer to this as like a company intranet or something along those lines. But think of this as my personalized work dashboard where all my tasks live. So the first thing you'll notice within my employee hub is that even though I can access corporate-wide information, this portal is personalized to me, so I only see the information that is relevant to me and that I have access to. Now again, almost like a personal work dashboard, if you will. The way this particular portal is set up is that the access to all corporate-wide services are up here towards the top. So you'll see, for example, right here we have corporate announcements or quick links to commonly requested services, or even access to department-specific pages that'll dig into a little bit later in this demo as well. But if I scroll down, you'll see now that I have some information that's relevant to me. Right here we could see a couple of graphs that would catch my interest. Sort of sales at a glance right here. But down below we can see I actually have work that needs to be completed. So in my mind, there's no guessing, there's no miscommunication, no searching in email. If you have an open task, it will be listed right here. Now the cool thing about these portals is they act kind of like super dashboards. And what I mean by that is, yeah, there's a lot of information here, but everything that's being displayed is actionable or helpful. So let's take a look at how this works. Now, as I mentioned, it looks like we have an open task, or several, that need to be completed. So first, let me see what these tasks are. Let me click into the My Work page. And when I open this, you can see I have a few items that are pending. And let's assume Frank is Kevin. Kevin is waiting on me to review and approve this quote before he sends it over to a customer. So let's go ahead and get this done for Kevin. You can see he attached the quote for me to review. I'll go ahead and download that. Open this up. We'll look through this. It looks good. So what I'll do is I'll go back into my portal and I'll say, looks good. Please send to the customer. Now, by submitting this, Kevin will get my response. It'll keep a trail of all communication on this. All right, so I'll go ahead and click approve to approve that quote for Kevin. Now that it's been approved, I'll navigate back to my home page and you'll see that my work count of 4 is now showing 3. So that quote that we approved is just slid off my task list. Now that was an open task, but what if there was something I need to do as part of a standard corporate policy that no one is explicitly asking me to do? Well, since Jim, I'm in sales, there's a good chance he's traveling and meeting with clients quite a bit. So he probably has some outstanding expenses he needs to provide expense reports for before the month is over. Since expense reports are something every salesperson truly loves, right? We all love it. We can see that there's a quick link up at the top, and I'll just kind of go ahead and click on this to open it up. Okay, now you see I got directly sent to the expense report form. I don't need to add any personal information as the system already knows who I am and it auto-populates it all behind the scenes. So all I'm going to do is just go ahead and submit the form with the fields it has. So first off, I'll say dinner with customer, and we'll say the expense category is meals. I will have the receipt attached. The location is Chili's. I love those baby back ribs. I'll say had a great meeting and will move the deal forward next week. Now, this customer, I believe, was Staples. We'll say I use my personal card. The vendor is Chili's. And then let me view my receipt locally here. I'll say my subtotal was $35.55. Tax was $293, which brings us to a grand total of $34.48. Now I have a receipt, so I'm gonna go ahead and attach it to this expense report, and I'll hit submit. Now what this is doing is it's submitting my expense report, and if I reload the page, you can see that my dinner with customer expense request has been submitted and no status just yet because it hasn't been reviewed. Okay, so now I can continue on with my day. I'm going to jump back to the home page, and as I was completing the expense report, I noticed that my laptop was acting up again. And that reminded me that I had already submitted a request for IT to check out my broken laptop. So now that I'm back on the home page, I want to check in on that. Now, if I scroll down, you can see my requests. I have an open request for my broken laptop. I'm going to click on that to see what's going on. Now, out of the gate, you can see that I submitted this ticket on the 14th, and it's still open. Let's go ahead and say, what is the status of this request? Now, I submitted my request, and the system admin, who's managing the IT support tickets, I'm just going to jump over to Smartsheet really quick to show how this works, will receive my request with all the information that's available that I submitted, but also all my conversations. So I just now submitted what is the status of this request. if I'm the IT admin, I can say this is in progress and we will handle the issue in the order it was received. I'm going to go ahead and post that. And now as Jim in my portal, I'll see that update from the system admin. Now, as you can see, my being able to access all of these services in one centralized location, but manage them all on Smartsheet through different sheets, different folders, and perhaps even different workspaces. It really cuts down the time, and I was able to actually get a lot of work done in a very short amount of time. But so far, I've mostly been task focused. Now, what if I just need some information and I'm not sure who to ask? This is really an underappreciated value add that employee portals provide. Employee portals like this can also act as a repository or knowledge base for corporate information. So you can find out what you're looking for without having to know who to ask. So in this scenario, let's say I'm planning a vacation with my wife, Pam, and I'd like to make sure I review the PTO policy before I request time off. Since PTO requests are a very common request, you can see that we have a quick link at the top of the page. Let me jump back to the home page. You can see we have a quick link up at the top of the page here. And if I click on that, it takes me to a simple request form with active requests. Now, in this case, they've embedded the policy document right here on the request page. There are many different ways to display this information, such as a knowledge article, but for purposes of this demo, we wanted to put it within the request page. So I'll go ahead and click this button and review the policy. And now that I'm good, I'll go ahead and close this out and I'll fill out the form to make a request. We'll say we're going on vacation from 12/5 to 12/12, and I'll submit that. And similar to the other request submissions you've seen, we will track all of the active requests with no status. Now I can get a notification when this has been approved, and I can also come back to my PTO request dashboard to see my PTO requests. Okay, now so far we've been working through Jim's employee portal, a regular employee view. What I'm going to do now is switch over to a different user. Now, what if I was a manager or maybe a regional manager named Michael? I might have a different view when I log in. So let's get back to Jim's employee dashboard and switch roles to impersonate Michael Scott. Now, you can see the dashboards are similar, but the data is different for that particular user. You'll see, for example, that since I'm a regional manager, I've got additional charts with maybe more information by sales rep. I've also got a branch location map, which I could zoom into for the state of Pennsylvania. It's all interactive, so I can click on these pins and I can actually navigate to the information. Let's go ahead and go to Philadelphia. Now, once I get to this page, I'm diving into that Philadelphia location, and I can learn a little bit about the information at that location at a high level. I could see sales numbers, I could see other information show up. I've got some charts that are specific to that location. I've got the directory for all users at that location as well. And this information is actually coming out of a sheet. So if I jump back to that manager homepage to view the map and we click into locations, you can see here that all of my locations are listed in this sheet. And when I put them on a map, you can see that they all show here as pins on a map. Now, what happens when I click into that individual pin is it's actually showing me an individual row item from this location sheet, pulling the data in and then connecting all the dots to other sheets like this directory sheet. This is just a really quick overview of how you can have much more connected workplace, while optimizing the workflows, standardizing operations, and improving employee morale. Now, I'm going to switch over and talk a little bit about the configuration management tool, which is mainly for the system administrators. So far, everything you've seen in this employee portal has been from the everyday user's perspective. But what if I'm an administrator of the internal operations or the Smartsheet admin? How will I be able to manage and maintain this portal and all the applications it connects to? The first thing we want to note for the administrator is they have the ability to view this visual map of what their Smartsheet solution looks like. So if I jump back into Smartsheet, you can see that I have this folder and file structure here. The Huddle Visual Mapper removes the folders and that structure from the equation, and it shows data flows from sheet to dashboard, from dashboard to report. All these flows are automatically identified by the system, and all the different artifacts are linked. So now I have a dependency flow saying, this sheet is connected to this sheet via this column or formula. It gives me a little bit more control over what I see from the system administration perspective. If I click into Huddle Items, I can also see that same breakdown of items, but in a list format with links to individual items that we want to track here. So now what this is doing is showing me all of my different artifacts in my solution. And if I click into one of them to see some high-level information, I can see this is tracking the structure of the sheet. And where I'm going with this is part of a regular business application development cycle. We want to know that we're maintaining the integrity of our solution by tracking schema changes. And what I mean by that is if somebody goes in and changes a column from text to dropdown, how can we know that somebody is doing that appropriately or in accordance with what we decided to out of a meeting or something like that? We insert something called version control, which is similar to activity history, but this takes it a step further and allows us to track the schema of the Smartsheet solution. So if I want to compare a version that I saved a month ago to today, I can see that in this sheet, we changed the column, so it's now hidden. So if I don't want it to be hidden, and I also don't want this other column to be hidden, I can programmatically revert those changes using a revert control feature that allows me to select a previous version and revert that. And this will basically revert similar to how Control Center Global Updates run. It would create a backup of the sheet. It would show the updates to that backup, where I can then go in and validate all the data and everything looks the same. And if it is good, I can confirm it and it will roll this out to the live sheet. So if I say that I want to capture this version, I can come in here and say this was the outcome of a weekly dev call. I can save this version, and now it's going to be logged in my version control that I can revert back to later. And lastly, one of the big parts of our configuration management tool, and being a Smartsheet Platinum partner for so long, and seeing all this firsthand, is documentation. So if I jump back to the actual huddle itself and go into the documentation tab, you can see that we take all of these solution artifacts, the sheets, dashboards, reports, and add baseline documentation. That gives us the ability to add business context, architecture overview, what the use of each component is, track changes as people make updates, and basically do everything that you need to do in your day-to-day system management, but then documentation follows you and updates in the background. We use a really cool Gen AI that tracks the context of the application, the huddle, and the individual artifacts themselves to generate this documentation. Now, we walked through the portal on the first half of my demo, and now I want to go in and show you that portal builder. So let's go back to the Dunder Mifflin page, and let's go back to the home page. So you might say this is all great, but as a huddle admin, how would I build something like this? Just looking at this area of the portal right here, we have 3 different sheets. We have a request tracker sheet, a sales pipeline work quote request tracker sheet, and a directory sheet. Well, let's walk through that really quick, because as Zaid mentioned, there's a drag and drop portal page builder. Let's explore that now. So I'll click into this, and you can see at a high level we have a column and row structure. This allows us to lay out the page in a fashion that we can sort of see visually here. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the My Work widget and click in to edit this. As you can see, my connection to Smartsheet allows me to pull in sheets specifically. So if I wanted to say, of the sales pipeline, I want to pull in my sales pipeline sheet, which is on the screen right here. I'll scroll up and you can see that there are 125 different sales opportunities that we're tracking. Let's go back to the sheet. Well, this demo that we're looking at only shows 3. Okay, now similar to the report builder, if I remove all of my filters, you'll see that I have 147 that are coming through. So now what I want to do here is take that data set and narrow it down to something that might be specific to a user. Now, in the demo, I showed you that if I was logged in as Jim or as Michael Scott, or even if I was logged in as Frank, right? All that data would be pared down to that specific user. You can do that by matching a column to a specific logged in user. So similar to the report builder in Smartsheet, that current user, we have the same functionality. So we're using that Smartsheet current user. So in this particular example, the sales rep column has my contact field for that. You can see that my user has 65 associated deals. Well, I don't want to show all those. So let's go to the sales stages. Let's do it is one of, and since our integration with Smartsheet is so deep, it's pulling in the actual column pick list items. I will say I want it to be open. So now this is filtering down this sheet to show me all opportunities that are matching my user account with a status of open. Now you can see I have 3 deals left. I'll go ahead and save those changes, and you can see that in real time on the back end, you can view a preview of what this looks like with some more information. But then on the front end, if I hit reload, everything is coming in live and real. So thanks again, everybody. We really appreciate you joining the webinar and hope you learned about how to make the employee experience a bit more fun with Smartsheet and Huddle. These QR codes will remain on the screen, and please feel free to reach out if you'd like to see another demo or have any other follow-up questions. Thanks. Bye-bye.